I am Allison, 34 years old, and founder of a successful tech company. My life changed when a drunk driver ran a red light, leaving me with a shattered leg and 4 broken ribs. When my mother Diane and stepfather Gerald moved in to help during my recovery, I never expected betrayal. That morning when I called for assistance to the bathroom and my mother snapped, "We are not your damn servants," I realized the truth about family in the very house I worked so hard to buy. Drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and be sure to subscribe for more stories about setting boundaries with toxic family members. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania shaped who I am today. Our house was modest but comfortable, sitting on a quiet street lined with maple trees that turned brilliant shades of red and orange every fall. My childhood was relatively normal until my parents divorced when I was 10. Dad moved across the country to Seattle for work, and his visits became increasingly rare over the years. 2 years after the divorce, Mom met Gerald at a company picnic. He worked in the same insurance office, managed a team of salespeople, and drove a shiny black Cadillac that he washed every Saturday without fail. 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony at the local courthouse. I remember wearing an uncomfortable blue dress that itched around the collar and Gerald patting me on the head afterward saying, "Now we are a proper family again." From that day forward, our household dynamics shifted dramatically. My mother Diane transformed from being my advocate to constantly seeking Gerald's approval. She changed how she dressed, spoke, and even changed her political opinions to match his. When I voiced opinions that differed from Gerald's, I would later find Mom in my bedroom telling me to try harder and make things easier for everyone. Computers became my sanctuary during those tense middle school years. While other kids played outside, I taught myself basic programming, fascinated by how I could create something from nothing but logic and code. My guidance counselor noticed my aptitude and encouraged me to pursue it, but at home my interests were dismissed as playing around on that computer all day. "You will never make a living staring at screens," Gerald would say, despite the tech boom happening all around us. Mom would nod in agreement, though sometimes I caught a flicker of doubt in her eyes. During high school, I became laser-focused on earning scholarships. I knew education was my ticket to independence, but conversations about college funding were met with vague promises and subtle discouragement. "College is expensive, and not everyone is cut out for it," Gerald would remark during dinner. "My cousin never went, and he does just fine selling insurance." Despite the lack of support, I maintained a 4.0 GPA, became president of the computer club, and won a state programming competition my senior year. When the acceptance letter from Carnegie Mellon arrived with a substantial scholarship offer, I cried tears of joy and relief. Mom hugged me tightly that night when Gerald was working late. "I always knew you were smart," she whispered, a rare moment of connection that felt bittersweet because of its secrecy. College life introduced me to independence and like-minded peers who shared my passion for technology. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously: mornings at the campus, coffee shop afternoons in the computer lab, and weekends, waitressing at an upscale restaurant. Every dollar went toward covering what my scholarship did not, and building a small emergency fund that represented freedom. My phone calls home grew less frequent, usually consisting of Mom asking when I would visit and me making excuses about coursework. The truth was, each visit left me emotionally drained from walking on eggshells around Gerald and watching my mother morph into someone I barely recognized. After graduation, I accepted an entry-level position at a promising startup in Silicon Valley. My tiny studio apartment cost more than I wanted to spend, but being 3,000 miles from Pittsburgh felt worth every penny. The company culture was intense but exhilarating. I often worked 16-hour days fueled by passion and the desire to prove myself. By 26, I had developed a revolutionary project management application that streamlined workflow for creative teams. My bosses were impressed, but hesitant to fully invest in the new direction. After months of consideration and encouragement from mentors, I made the terrifying decision to strike out on my own. The first year of entrepreneurship was brutal. I lived on ramen noodles, worked from a converted closet in my apartment, and faced countless rejections from potential investors. Mom would call occasionally, her voice laced with worry and suggestions that perhaps it was time to get a real job again. Gerald was more direct, sending job listings for software companies with notes saying, "Before you end up homeless." Then came the breakthrough. A major design agency implemented my software and reported a 30% increase in productivity. Their public praise led to a feature in a prestigious tech magazine, which caught the attention of serious investors. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of what I had built. By 28, I was CEO of my own rapidly growing company with 40 employees and an office in downtown San Francisco. At 32, I purchased my dream home. A beautiful 4-bedroom house in the Oakland Hills with panoramic views of the bay. The day I signed the final papers, I stood alone in the empty living room, keys in hand, and allowed myself to feel the magnitude of what I had accomplished despite the odds. My relationship with Mom and Gerald remained cordial but distant. I sent gifts on birthdays and holidays, called on special occasions, and visited once a year during the holidays. These visits were strained, filled with thinly veiled comments about my unmarried status and working too much. I noticed Mom would frequently show her friends photos of my house and company events, claiming proud maternal credit for successes she had actively doubted. Then, 3 months ago, everything changed. I was driving home from a late meeting when a pickup truck ran a red light and slammed into the driver's side of my car. The impact was catastrophic. I remember the deafening crash, the sensation of being violently thrown sideways, and then sirens wailing in the distance before everything went dark. I woke up in the hospital with my right leg suspended in a complicated brace, my body a constellation of cuts, bruises, and 4 broken ribs that made each breath painful. The doctors explained that my leg required 2 immediate surgeries, with a 3rd likely needed in the future. The recovery would be long and difficult, 8 weeks of bed rest followed by months of physical therapy before I could walk normally again. My assistant Marcus coordinated with my leadership team to keep the company running smoothly in my absence. My friends visited regularly, bringing food and companionship, but they all had jobs in their own lives. The hard reality was that I needed daily assistance for basic needs during those first critical weeks of recovery. After considerable deliberation and encouragement from my doctor about the importance of having full-time help, I made the difficult call to my mother. I explained the situation, prepared for rejection or excuses. To my surprise, she immediately offered to come with Gerald to help until I regained mobility. "You are family, Allison," she said with unusual warmth. "Of course we will be there for you." 2 days later, they arrived at my doorstep with multiple suitcases and concerned expressions that seemed genuine. As Gerald helped me adjust my pillows and Mom unpacked groceries in the kitchen, I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps this crisis might mend our fractured relationship. Looking back, I should have noticed how Mom's eyes widened as she took in the marble countertops and designer furniture. I should have paid attention to how Gerald asked pointed questions about my security system and home office. But pain medication clouded my judgment, and desperation for help blinded me to the warning signs that were there from the beginning. "This is such a fancy house," Mom commented, running her hand along my dining table. "Must be nice to afford all these expensive things." Little did I know that her seemingly innocent observation was just the beginning of what would become the most painful betrayal of my life. The first few days after Mom and Gerald moved in seemed promising. Mom prepared comforting meals from my childhood, her famous chicken noodle soup, homemade lasagna, and apple cinnamon pancakes on Sunday morning. The familiar tastes brought back memories of the good times before the divorce, before Gerald, when Mom was fully present and genuinely nurturing. Gerald surprised me by setting up an improved entertainment system in my bedroom, connecting my television to streaming services, and positioning everything for optimal viewing from the bed. He even installed a small refrigerator beside my nightstand, stocked with water, juice, and snacks. Now, you do not have to call for everything he explained with what seemed like thoughtfulness, just the important stuff. Having help with medications, bathroom visits, and basic hygiene was an immense relief. The pain remained intense, but knowing someone was there to assist made it more manageable. For a brief moment, I wondered if I had misjudged them all these years. The first sign of trouble emerged on day 5. I asked Mom to grab a specific cooking pan for her dinner preparation, explaining it was in the cabinet beside the stove. "I cannot find it," she called back, frustration evident in her voice. When I was finally able to maneuver to the kitchen with my walker later that week, I discovered why. Every cabinet had been completely reorganized. My carefully arranged cookware dishes and pantry items were entirely rearranged according to some system I could not comprehend. Mom, why did you move everything around? I asked, leaning heavily on my walker. She looked surprised by my question. This is proper kitchen organization, Allison. Your system made no sense. No one puts glasses in lower cabinets. But I arrange things based on how often I use them, I explained. The things I reach for daily are at accessible heights. She dismissed my explanation with a wave. This is better. You will thank me later. It was a small thing, but it marked the beginning of a pattern. My home was slowly being reconfigured according to their preferences without my input or consent. The next incident occurred when I overheard Gerald commenting on my furniture to someone on the phone. Probably paid thousands for this couch. Can you believe it? Such a waste of money when you can get something perfectly good at a discount store. That evening, I noticed 3 unfamiliar faces peering through my bedroom doorway. Mom introduced them as her cousin Beth, and Beth's adult children who just happened to be in the area and wanted to say hello. Before I could process this, they were walking through my house, opening doors, examining artwork, and asking pointed questions about property values in the neighborhood. Mom, I said later when we were alone, I appreciate you wanting to see family, but I am not comfortable with unannounced visitors while I am in this condition. She looked hurt. They are family, Allison. Family should always be welcome. I would just like advance notice, I clarified. You have become so private since you got all this money, she replied, gesturing around the room. It is not healthy to be so secretive. The incidents multiplied. I woke one morning to find Mom wearing my designer silk blouse, one I had purchased to celebrate a major company milestone. That is actually mine, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I just borrowed it for lunch with the ladies, she replied, smoothing the fabric. Besides, you cannot wear it now anyway with your condition. When I checked my wallet later that day, $500 in cash was missing from the side pocket. I distinctly remembered placing it there before the accident for an event that was subsequently canceled. That evening, I carefully broached the subject. Mom, did you happen to borrow some cash from my wallet? I had $500 that seems to be missing. Her face immediately crumpled, eyes welling with tears. I cannot believe you would accuse me of stealing after everything we have done for you. Gerald, who had been watching television, switched it off and entered the conversation. If that is how you feel about having us here, Allison, perhaps we should leave you to manage on your own. The threat was clear, and panic rose in my chest. Despite my progress, I was nowhere near able to care for myself independently. The manipulation was familiar from childhood, create a situation where I felt guilty for setting any boundary, then threaten abandonment if I did not comply. I am not accusing anyone. I backpedaled. I just thought maybe you needed it for groceries or something and forgot to mention it. Mom sniffed dramatically. Well, I did take some money for household supplies. I assumed that was understood since we are buying food and things for your care. She never mentioned the amount, and I never saw receipts for these supposed supplies, but I was too exhausted and dependent to press further. As days turned into weeks, I increasingly felt like a stranger in my own home. Unfamiliar people came and went. Personal items disappeared or were relocated. The house no longer felt like my sanctuary, but rather a space I was merely occupying while others took control. One afternoon, I heard Mom giving what sounded like a tour to several women, her voice carrying down the hallway. And this is the master suite, completely renovated last year with Italian marble in the bathroom. The closet is the size of my entire bedroom back home. The casual ownership in her tone sent a chill through me. She spoke about my house as if it belonged to her, as if my success was somehow an extension of her own achievements. Later that evening, I found Gerald wearing my monogrammed bathrobe, his feet propped up on my coffee table, drinking my rare Japanese whiskey that had been a gift from an important client. Make yourself at home, I muttered under my breath, too quietly for him to hear. But he must have sensed my disapproval because he looked up with narrowed eyes. You know, Allison, many children would be grateful to have parents willing to put their lives on hold to care for them. The guilt trip was expertly deployed, and I retreated both physically and emotionally. The power dynamic was painfully clear in my moment of vulnerability. They held all the cards, and they knew it. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had become the source of such anxiety and discomfort. The physical pain in my leg was now matched by the growing emotional pain of recognizing that their help came with invisible strings, attached strings that were beginning to feel dangerously like a net. By week 3 of their stay, a troubling pattern had solidified. My requests for help were increasingly met with delays or outright ignorance. Some mornings I would call for assistance to the bathroom, only to wait an hour or more before anyone responded. "We were busy" was the typical excuse, though I could hear the television running or phone conversations happening just down the hall. Meals became unpredictable. Despite the doctor emphasizing the importance of regular nutrition for healing, lunch might appear at 11 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, depending on Mom and Gerald's schedule and whims. Gerald had claimed the living room as his territory, spending entire days watching sports on my expensive smart television, his shoes leaving marks on my coffee table. He answered my phone when friends called, telling them I was not up for visitors without consulting me first. One Tuesday afternoon, I was startled by the sound of multiple female voices laughing in my dining room. Using my walker, I painfully made my way down the hallway to discover Mom hosting what appeared to be a formal lunch party for 6 women I had never met. The table was set with my best china and crystal glasses. My premium wine collection had been opened and was being generously poured. Mom sat at the head of the table, gesturing grandly as she told some story that had the group captivated. And then I told the interior designer that the silk drapes simply would not do for this exposure, so we selected the Egyptian cotton blend. Instead, she was saying as if she had personally decorated the house. She noticed me standing in the doorway, leaning heavily on my walker, and her smile faltered momentarily before brightening again with artificial warmth. "Ladies, this is my daughter Allison, the one I was telling you about. Sweetheart, come meet my bridge club. They were dying to see the house." The women regarded me with curious expressions, some tinged with what looked suspiciously like pity. I managed a tight smile, excused myself, and retreated to my room, humiliation burning in my chest. Later that day, I discovered something even more disturbing. My home office door, which I always kept locked, was ajar. Inside, file cabinet drawers were partially open, and papers on my desk appeared to have been shuffled through. My laptop, which contained sensitive company information, showed signs of recent use. A cold feeling settled in my stomach as I realized they had been examining my financial documents and contracts. The invasion of privacy was bad enough, but the potential security breach for my company was absolutely unacceptable. That evening, I checked my email and found a notification from my credit card company about unusual spending patterns. The statement revealed thousands of dollars in recent charges at department stores, restaurants, and even a jewelry shop. The card had been physically used, not stolen digitally, which meant someone had taken it from my wallet. When I confronted Mom about the office intrusion and credit card charges, her response left me speechless. "We deserve some compensation for uprooting our lives to help you," she said, without a trace of guilt. "Do you have any idea what professional caregivers cost? We are saving you a fortune." "You could have asked," I said, struggling to control my emotions. "Taking my credit card without permission is theft, Mom." Gerald stepped forward, his posture intimidating despite my attempts not to be cowed. "Family helps family, Allison, and family property stays in the family. Have you given any thought to what happens to all this if something were to happen to you?" The implication sent a chill down my spine. It sounded disturbingly like they were thinking about inheritance, about my assets, while I was still very much alive and simply trying to recover from an accident. "You should add us to the house deed," Mom added casually, "for security purposes. What if you had another accident or got sick again? We need to be able to manage things properly." I stammered something non-committal, claiming fatigue and retreating to my room, where I locked the door and tried to process what was happening. Their behavior was escalating from annoying to genuinely concerning. I felt constantly monitored, my autonomy eroding day by day under their watchful eyes. When I attempted to call my friend Amanda the next day, I discovered that Gerald had moved the landline phone from my nightstand. My cell phone battery was mysteriously drained, and the charger had vanished from its usual place. "Gerald, have you seen my phone charger?" I called out. "You need to rest, not worry about work calls," he replied from down the hall. The doctor said stress delays healing. The isolation tactics were becoming more obvious. When friends texted asking why I was not responding to calls, Mom would read the messages before I could see them and reply that I was sleeping or not feeling well enough for visitors. My body was slowly healing the pain, becoming more manageable, but I still required significant assistance for basic tasks. The physical dependency made it nearly impossible to assert meaningful boundaries without risking being left helpless. In quiet moments alone, I researched professional home care options on my laptop, always careful to clear my browsing history afterward. The prices were steep, but increasingly seemed worth every penny if it meant reclaiming my home and privacy. One night I woke to voices coming from the kitchen. Curious, I carefully maneuvered out of bed and moved silently down the hallway with my walker. "The guest room is too small," Mom was saying. "Once we move in permanently, we should take the master suite. She can relocate to the smaller bedroom downstairs when she can handle stairs again." "What about her things?" Gerald asked. "We will sort through everything. Keep what is useful, donate the rest. She has far too many possessions anyway. It is not healthy." Their words confirmed my worst fears. This was not temporary help during a crisis. This was a calculated plan to insinuate themselves into my life and home, permanently treating my property as their future inheritance while I was still very much alive. The next morning, I noticed several expensive electronic items missing, including my iPad and wireless headphones. When questioned, Mom claimed she had put them away for safekeeping but could not immediately recall where. Meanwhile, Gerald had been examining my home security system with unusual interest, asking detailed questions about the safe in my closet and whether I had updated my will recently. "Just thinking about your protection," he explained when I questioned his interest. "You never know what could happen." That night I lay awake, replaying years of similar manipulative patterns throughout my childhood and early adulthood. The disrespect of boundaries, the guilt trips, the subtle threats, the moving goalposts of acceptance. All the behaviors I had escaped by building my own life were now reasserting themselves within the walls of the very home I had created as a sanctuary. Something needed to change, and soon. But trapped in a body that was still healing, dependent on their assistance for basic needs, I felt cornered and increasingly desperate. The woman who had built a tech company from nothing, who had overcome countless obstacles in a male-dominated industry, was now struggling to maintain basic autonomy in her own home. I fell into an uneasy sleep, unaware that the true breaking point was just hours away. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning with intense pain radiating through my leg. My pain medication had worn off early and the throbbing was becoming unbearable. I reached for the bottle on my nightstand only to discover it was empty. The new prescription was in the kitchen, where Mom had insisted on keeping all medications organized. "Mom," I called out, my voice strained. "Gerald, I need help with my medication." Silence greeted my calls. I tried again, louder this time, fighting through the pain to project my voice down the hallway. Still nothing. After 10 minutes of calling, I heard movements in the kitchen. The faint sound of cupboards opening and closing, water running, and what sounded like laughter reached my ears. "Mom, Gerald, please, I need help," I called again, desperation creeping into my voice. Another 15 minutes passed with no response, though I could clearly hear them moving around the house, seemingly ignoring my increasingly urgent calls. The pain was becoming blinding, and now another problem was developing. I desperately needed to use the bathroom, a task still impossible without assistance given my current mobility limitations. "Please," I shouted, my voice cracking. "I need help right now." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mom appeared in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, looking irritated rather than concerned. "What is all the shouting about? We were having breakfast." "I have been calling for almost 30 minutes, I explained, wincing through the pain. "My medication wore off and I really need to use the bathroom immediately." She sighed dramatically. "Can it not wait until we finish our coffee? We just sat down." "No, Mom, it cannot wait. I am in serious pain and I need to use the bathroom right now." Gerald appeared behind her, his expression similarly annoyed. "Every 5 minutes it is something with you. We have not had a moment to ourselves since we got here." The bathroom need was becoming desperate. "Please," I begged, humiliation burning through me at having to plead for such basic assistance. "I will fall if I try alone." Mom threw up her hands in exasperation. "Fine. But honestly, Allison, this is getting ridiculous." As she reluctantly moved to help me, something inside her seemed to snap. She stopped abruptly, her face contorting with unexpected rage. "We are not your damn servants. she shouted, the sudden venom in her voice, shocking me into silence. "We gave up our lives to come here and help you, and all you do is order us around like hired help." Gerald joined in immediately as if they had rehearsed this moment. "You think because you have this fancy house in your company that you are better than everyone else. You have always been entitled and spoiled." The verbal assault continued as I sat frozen in my bed, pain temporarily forgotten in the face of this unexpected attack. "We have been keeping tabs on everything we have done for you," Mom spat. "Every meal, every bath, every little errand. You have no idea what caring for someone actually costs." "The credit card charges," Gerald added with a sneer. "Consider that compensation for our time. Professional care would have cost you triple what we spent." I found my voice small, though it was against their tirade. "I would have happily paid for professional care if you had asked for compensation." "Asked," Mom laughed bitterly. "Why should we ask for what we deserve? After all the sacrifices we made raising you, putting food on the table, keeping a roof over your head, this house, everything you own, is because of the foundation we provided." The sheer audacity of the claim momentarily stole my breath. The foundation they provided, the same foundation that had dismissed my dreams, belittled my ambitions, and actively discouraged my education and career path at every turn. "You know," Gerald said, his voice dropping to a more calculated tone, "we have been thinking it makes sense for us to move in permanently. This house is too big for just one person anyway. We could sell our place back home, combine resources. It is the sensible thing to do." I never agreed to. That I managed to respond, still reeling from their outburst. "Ungrateful," Mom hissed. "After everything we have done, this is how you repay family loyalty." The reality of the situation crystallized with terrible clarity. They had never intended to help me recover. This had always been about access to my home, my resources, my success. The accident had simply provided the perfect opportunity to implement a plan they had possibly been contemplating for years. "I need to use the bathroom," I repeated, trying to redirect the conversation to my immediate need. "We can discuss everything else afterward." "Discuss," Gerald scoffed. "There is nothing to discuss. Family takes care of family. Period. Your attitude is disappointing, Allison." Mom turned to leave the room. "You can wait another 30 minutes until we finish our breakfast. Maybe that will give you time to think about your priorities and show some gratitude." They walked out, closing the door behind them, leaving me alone with both physical and emotional pain reaching unbearable levels. For nearly an hour, they ignored my continued calls. When they finally returned, they helped me to the bathroom with visible resentment, making the already humiliating experience even more degrading. Afterward, they roughly helped me back to bed, dropped 2 pain pills on the nightstand without water, and informed me they were going shopping and would return when they felt like it. Before leaving, Gerald took my cell phone. "You need to rest, not waste energy on work calls." I heard the front door slam, followed by the sound of my car starting in the driveway. They had taken my keys without permission again. Alone in the silent house, without phone, water, or proper medication dosage, I felt a wave of despair wash over me. Tears flowed freely as I confronted the terrible truth. The people who should have loved me most were actively taking advantage of my vulnerability, planning to take over my life and home while disguising their actions as care and family. Obligation. Through the tears, something hardened inside me. A determination I had not felt since the early days of starting my company, when every investor door slammed in my face. I had overcome those obstacles through resourcefulness and resolve. Somehow, I would find a way through this as well. With tremendous effort and pain, I managed to inch toward the edge of the bed. My dresser just 6 feet away held my spare cell phone kept for emergencies. It would not have service, but it could connect to Wi-Fi. If I could just reach it, I could call for help. The journey across that short distance was excruciating. Lowering myself to the floor, I crawled inch by agonizing inch, each movement sending shooting pain through my healing leg. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I fought through the pain, driven by the knowledge that this might be my only chance to regain control of my life. After what felt like hours, but was likely 20 minutes, my fingers closed around the dresser drawer handle. I pulled it open, rummaged blindly through its contents, and finally felt the smooth case of the backup phone. With trembling hands, I powered it on, connected to Wi-Fi, and called Amanda through a messaging app. Her familiar voice answered after 2 rings. Amanda, I sobbed, the emotion finally breaking through. I need help. Can you come over right away, please? It is an emergency. Allison, what is wrong? Are you hurt? Concern filled her voice. Through tears, I gave her a abbreviated version of what was happening. The neglect, the financial exploitation, the plans to take over my home, the isolation tactics. I will be there in 20 minutes, she said firmly. Hang on, sweetie. Help is coming. As I ended the call, a strange calm settled over me. The truth was now spoken aloud, acknowledged by someone else. The invisible web of manipulation that had entangled me was now visible, and once seen, it could not be unseen. I painfully made my way back to bed, exhausted but resolute. This was my home, my life, my success, and no one, not even the people who had given me life, had the right to take that from me. For the first time in weeks, despite the physical pain and emotional trauma, I felt something resembling hope. The breaking point had been reached, but it would be my breaking free, not my breaking down. Amanda arrived 18 minutes after my call using the emergency key I had given her years ago. Her gasp when she saw me told me everything I needed to know about my appearance. 3 weeks under my mother and stepfather's care had left me pale, unwashed, and visibly thinner. "Oh my God, Allison," she whispered, rushing to my bedside. "When was the last time you had proper food or medication?" I cannot remember. I admitted the relief of seeing a friendly face bringing fresh tears. They have been controlling everything, including when I get my pain medication. Amanda, a registered nurse by profession before switching to tech project management, immediately went into assessment mode. She checked my surgical incisions, took my pulse, and examined the mobility in my healing leg. "This is neglect, Allison," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Some of these incision areas are showing signs of poor care. You are dehydrated, and I would bet anything your pain management has been completely inconsistent." She helped me to the bathroom, assisted with a proper washing, and changed me into clean clothes. Then she brought water, prepared a small, nutritious meal from the kitchen, and made sure I took the correct dosage of medication from the bottles she found scattered around the kitchen counter. As the pain subsided to manageable levels, we formulated a plan. Amanda made several phone calls, and by early afternoon she had arranged for a professional home care service to start the following morning. Susan, an experienced home health nurse, would arrive at 8 a.m. to take over my care. "Now, about your mother and Gerald," Amanda said, sitting beside me on the bed. "We need to get them out of here immediately." "They took my car," I explained. "They said they would be back when they felt like it." "Good. That gives us time to prepare." Amanda helped me into the guest room where Mom and Gerald had been staying. What we found shocked even Amanda, who had been skeptical of them from the beginning. Shopping bags from luxury stores filled one corner, tags still attached to designer clothes and accessories. My missing iPad and other electronics were stacked on the dresser. Receipts scattered across the desk showed thousands of dollars in purchases, all on my credit cards. Most disturbing was a folder containing printouts about property law, home ownership rights for caregivers, and several highlighted articles about how family members could claim partial ownership of property under certain conditions of extended residence and contribution. "They were researching how to legally claim your house," Amanda said, her face pale with anger. This was not impulsive, Allison. This was calculated. We continued searching and found a draft email to extended family members describing me as increasingly unstable and unable to manage her affairs independently, suggesting that they had no choice but to step in and take control for her own. Good. The evidence of their true intentions removed any lingering doubt or guilt I might have felt about my decision. This was not family helping family. This was predatory behavior targeting someone in a vulnerable position. Amanda stayed with me, helping me prepare for the confrontation to come. We changed the Wi-Fi password, contacted my credit card companies to report unauthorized use, and made a detailed list of missing items. She helped me dress in comfortable but presentable clothes, arranged pillows to support my leg in the living room, and positioned herself beside me, a silent but formidable ally. At 6:45 in the evening, we heard my car pull into the driveway. The front door opened, and Mom and Gerald entered, arms laden with shopping bags. They froze at the sight of Amanda and me sitting in the living room, clearly not expecting company. "What is she doing here?" Mom asked, her voice immediately defensive. Allison needs rest, not visitors. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Amanda is here at my request, and she will be staying tonight. Gerald set down the bags, his posture stiffening. We did not agree to overnight guests. As your caregivers, we need to approve any disruptions to your recovery routine. That brings me to what we need to discuss, I continued. I have arranged for professional home care starting tomorrow morning. Susan will be here at 8 a.m. to take over my medical needs. There was a moment of stunned silence before Mom's expression darkened. You did what? Without discussing it with us first. Yes. And I need you both to pack your things and leave by tomorrow afternoon. The bomb had been dropped. For a second, their faces registered shock, then quickly rearranged into expressions of wounded innocence. Leave. Mom placed a hand over her heart dramatically. Your own mother. After we dropped everything to come help you. I appreciate that you came, I said carefully. But it has become clear that this arrangement is not working. Not working. Gerald stepped forward aggressively until Amanda stood up, creating a barrier between us. We have been waiting on you hand and foot for weeks. This is how you show gratitude. By stealing from me, I asked quietly. By using my credit cards without permission. By researching how to claim ownership of my house. Their expressions flickered a momentary tell that confirmed their guilt before the denials began. We never stole anything, Mom protested. We were managing expenses for your care. We found the legal research, Amanda interjected coolly. The highlighted articles about caregiver rights to property. The draft emails describing Allison as mentally unstable. Gerald's face flushed red. You had no right to go through our private things. In my guest room in my house, I reminded him, nothing here belongs to you except the clothes you brought, and even some of those were purchased with my credit cards. Mom switched tactics, tears filling her eyes. I cannot believe you would throw your own mother out after everything I have done for you, carrying you for 9 months, raising you, sacrificing my own dreams for your future. And this is how you repay me, treating me like garbage to be tossed away. The guilt trip was familiar, but this time, seeing it deployed so transparently after what they had done, it lost its power over me. This is not about throwing anyone away, I said calmly. This is about boundaries and respect. You violated both repeatedly. Family does not need boundaries, Gerald shouted, his composure cracking. Family is about unconditional support. Exactly, I replied. Where was that unconditional support when you called me? Spoiled for asking for pain medication, or when you left me alone for hours without access to the bathroom, or when you discussed taking over my bedroom while I was still in it. They exchanged glances, realizing I had overheard more than they thought. You misunderstood, Mom began weakly. We were only trying to organize things better for your recovery. We have the credit card statements, Amanda cut in. We have photos of the shopping bags, the electronics in your room, the legal research. Would you like me to continue? Gerald's strategy shifted to intimidation. You have no idea what you are doing, Allison. Family obligations are legally binding. We could sue you for elder support for emotional distress. We gave up our lives to help you. For 3 weeks, I reminded him. During which you lived in my luxury home, ate food I paid for, drove my car, and spent thousands on my credit cards. I think any court would find that more than fair compensation. You cannot just kick us out. Mom was fully crying now, but I noticed the tears stopped and started with suspicious control. Where will we go? We need time to make arrangements. You have until tomorrow afternoon, I repeated firmly. I suggest you use the time to pack rather than shop or make threats. Mom turned to leave, then spun back with one last attempt. If you do this, Allison, you will regret it for the rest of your life. No real daughter would treat her mother this way. I will never forgive you. For a moment, her words hung in the air between us, a final attempt to secure control through guilt and emotional manipulation. In the past, such a statement would have devastated me, sent me spiraling into compliance and apology. Instead, I felt an unexpected clarity, as if seeing through a fog that had obscured my vision for decades. That is your choice, Mom, but this is my house and my life. Welcome to my rules. The phrase emerged without planning, but it captured everything I felt in that moment. This was my space created through my hard work, and I would no longer allow anyone to violate it regardless of biological connection. Gerald grabbed Mom's arm. Come on, Diane. She is not worth it. Let her see how she manages without family to support her. They retreated to the guest room, slamming the door behind them. For the next several hours, we heard drawers opening and closing, hushed, angry conversations, and occasional theatrical sobbing loud enough to ensure I would hear. Amanda stayed beside me, her presence, an anchor in the emotional storm. You did great, she whispered. That took incredible courage. Around midnight, we heard them moving through the house. Security camera notifications on my phone showed them loading multiple bags into my car, including several electronic items and small valuables that were definitely not theirs. Too exhausted to confront them again, I documented everything for potential legal action later. When the house finally fell silent, Amanda helped me back to my bedroom. For the first time in weeks, I felt safe enough to truly rest despite the lingering sadness beneath the relief. Thank you, I whispered as she arranged my pillows. I do not know what I would have done without you today. That is what real family does, she replied, squeezing my hand. And real family has nothing to do with DNA. As I drifted toward sleep, those words echoed in my mind. Real family. Perhaps that was the lesson in all of this. Family is defined by love, respect, and support, not by biological obligation or shared history. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. Tomorrow would bring a new chapter 1 where I reclaimed not just my home but my power and peace of mind. Susan, the professional home health nurse, arrived promptly at 8 the next morning, bringing an air of competent calm into the house. She was in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and the confident movements of someone who had spent decades in patient care. The contrast between her professional approach and my mother's care became immediately apparent. Susan conducted a thorough assessment, checked my medication schedule, and created a proper care plan within the first hour. Your incisions need better attention, she noted, applying proper dressing after cleaning the surgical sites, and your pain management has been inconsistent, which can actually delay healing. We will get that back on track today. By mid-morning, I had been properly bathed, dressed in clean clothes, and positioned comfortably in the living room with adequate hydration and nutrition. The physical relief was immediate, but it was the psychological comfort of being treated with respect and dignity that brought tears to my eyes. Mom and Gerald emerged from the guest room around 11, pointedly ignoring Susan and casting resentful glances my way. They loaded several suitcases into my car, still making no mention of when they might return the vehicle. We will be back for the rest of our things this afternoon, Gerald announced stiffly. Some items are too large to take now. I will be here, I replied evenly. Susan, could you please show them out? Their expressions at being escorted out by my nurse, rather than receiving tearful pleas to stay, gave me a small measure of satisfaction. The door closed behind them with a decisive click that felt symbolic of the boundary I had finally established. After they left, Amanda arrived to help Susan and me examine the guest room more thoroughly. What we discovered painted an even more disturbing picture than I had imagined. Hidden under the mattress, we found receipts for purchases totaling over $12,000 in just 3 weeks, all on my credit cards. Designer clothing, jewelry, electronics, and even a deposit on a vacation package to Cancun, scheduled for the following month. In the desk drawer, Amanda discovered a folder containing printouts of emails between my mother and various family members dating back months before my accident. The correspondence revealed that they had significant debt problems, were facing possible foreclosure on their home, and had been discussing ways to leverage Allison's success long before I was injured. Look at this, Amanda said, holding up a draft email addressed to my entire extended family. She was planning to tell everyone you were having mental health issues and needed family intervention. There are references to your increasing instability and concerning behavior that they needed to manage. But none of that is true, I said, shocked at the deliberate character assassination. I have never had mental health issues. That is the point, Susan interjected, her experienced eyes scanning the documents. They were creating a narrative to justify taking control of your assets. I have seen this pattern before with vulnerable patients. The family creates a fiction of incompetence to gain financial control. We continued searching and found more disturbing evidence, a notebook containing what appeared to be a drafted amendment to my will, on my own computer, photos of my financial documents and valuable items throughout the house, and a list of my banking information including account numbers. They installed spyware on your laptop, Amanda discovered checking my computer. They have probably been monitoring your emails and messages for weeks. The scope of the betrayal was breathtaking. This was not opportunistic taking advantage of a situation. This was a premeditated plan to systematically take over my life and assets, using my accident as the perfect entry point. Most painful was finding my mother's personal journal, which contained entries dating back years, expressing resentment over my success. She thinks she is so special with her fancy company, one entry read. Always was a show-off even as a child. Now she has all this money while we struggle. It is not fair. Parents should share in their children's success. Another entry dated just after my accident was particularly chilling. This might be the opportunity we have been waiting for. She will need help, and once we are in, we can gradually take over. She owes us after everything we did for her. The journal confirmed what I had long suspected, but never wanted to believe my mother's love had always been conditional, tinged with jealousy and resentment, rather than pride in my accomplishments. Amanda helped me secure my accounts, changing all passwords, and setting up additional security measures. We called the credit card companies to dispute the fraudulent charges and filed a police report about the stolen items they had taken. While I was not sure I wanted to press criminal charges against my own mother, documenting the theft was necessary for both insurance purposes and potential restraining orders if their behavior escalated further. Susan arranged for a locksmith to change all the exterior door locks and reset the security system codes. By mid-afternoon, my home was physically secured against their return. When they did return around 4:30, it was with theatrical indignation about the changed locks. Amanda met them at the door with the remaining items from the guest room packed in boxes and ready on the porch. "This is outrageous," I could hear my mother shouting. "You cannot keep us from entering. We have established residence here." "Actually," Amanda replied calmly, "you have not. 3 weeks as invited guests does not establish tenancy rights in California. These boxes contain everything left in the guest room except items belonging to Allison. My contact information is included for returning her vehicle by tomorrow, or we will report it stolen." "We will sue," Gerald threatened. "We have rights." "You are welcome to try," Amanda responded. "We have extensive documentation of unauthorized credit card use, theft of personal property, and evidence of attempted financial exploitation of a temporarily disabled individual. Would you like me to continue?" Their bluster deflated somewhat at the realization that their actions had been thoroughly discovered and documented. They loaded the boxes into my car and left without further confrontation, though Mom made sure to yell, "You will regret this," as a parting shot. Later that evening, as Susan helped me prepare for bed, I found myself processing the day's discoveries. I knew they were difficult. I confessed. But I never imagined they would go this far. How could my own mother plan something like this? Susan, with decades of experience observing family dynamics, offered a perspective that would prove invaluable to my healing process. "Some parents see their children as extensions of themselves rather than independent beings," she explained gently. "When that child becomes more successful or happier than they are, it triggers deep resentment rather than pride. Your success highlighted your mother's perceived failures, and rather than addressing her own issues, she convinced herself that you owed her that success." The insight helped me begin to frame what had happened, not as my failure to be a good daughter, but as my mother's inability to love unconditionally. It was the beginning of understanding that would eventually lead to acceptance, though the pain remained raw and throbbing like my healing leg. Over the next few days, we discovered even more evidence of their plans. They had contacted several of my clients posing as family representatives authorized to discuss business matters. They had researched elder abuse laws, apparently planning to eventually claim I was mistreating them once they established residence. They had even documented the location of all valuable items in my home in what appeared to be preparation for either insurance fraud or theft. Perhaps most disturbing was realizing this betrayal had been in the planning stages long before my accident. The injury had simply provided the perfect opportunity to implement a scheme they had been contemplating for months, possibly years. As the full picture emerged, I began to connect patterns from my childhood with recent events, the constant undermining of my confidence, the moving goalposts of approval, the subtle sabotage of opportunities, the jealousy thinly disguised as concern. Success had not created these dynamics. It had merely intensified patterns that had always existed. I spent my whole life trying to make them proud, I told Amanda one evening. Nothing was ever enough. Because it was never about you, she replied wisely. It was about their own insecurities and failures. Your success just made those harder for them to ignore. That simple truth, painful as it was, became the first step on a journey toward healing that would extend far beyond my physical recovery. The weeks that followed were transformative both physically and emotionally. Under Susan's professional care, my injuries began healing properly. Physical therapy sessions, though, challenging, yielded steady progress. By week 6, I could navigate short distances with a cane rather than a walker. Susan became more than just a caregiver. She became a friend and mentor. In her 50s, with grown children of her own, she offered perspectives shaped by life experience rather than personal agenda. Family is who loves you properly, she told me one afternoon while helping with exercises. Some people are lucky enough for that to be blood relatives. Others need to build their family from scratch. Both are equally valid and precious. As my mobility improved, friends began visiting regularly. Amanda organized a small dinner party once I could sit comfortably at the dining table. Gathered around me were 6 people who had shown unwavering support throughout my recovery, colleagues who had kept my company running smoothly, friends who had checked in consistently, and new connections like Susan who had entered my life during the crisis. Looking around that table, I realized I was surrounded by what truly mattered: authentic relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care. The legal aspects of the situation required attention as well. My attorney helped me create stronger protections for my assets, including a revised will that explicitly excluded my mother and Gerald from any inheritance. We filed for restraining orders after they made several attempts to contact my employees and business associates with false claims about my mental state. My car was eventually returned, left in my driveway with an empty gas tank and mysterious new dents. The tracking feature on my stolen electronics showed they had traveled to my mother's home state before being switched off permanently. The financial institutions reversed most of the fraudulent charges, though the process was lengthy and stressful. Perhaps the most unexpected development came when several extended family members contacted me after receiving bizarre emails from my mother. Her version of events portrayed her as the victim of an ungrateful daughter having a mental breakdown. Fortunately, these relatives knew me well enough to question her narrative and reach out directly. "Your mother sent us disturbing messages about you needing family intervention," my cousin Rachel wrote. "But this sounds nothing like the Allison I know. Are you okay? How can I help?" These connections led to revelations that my mother had engaged in similar manipulative behavior with other relatives over the years. Several had experienced financial exploitation or emotional manipulation, but had remained silent out of shame or family loyalty. My situation had inadvertently created a space for these experiences to be acknowledged and discussed openly. I learned that my mother and Gerald had been financially supported by various family members for years, always with dramatic stories of temporary hardship and promises of repayment that never materialized. Their pattern of exploitation extended far beyond me, though my success and resources had made me their most ambitious target. Therapy became an essential part of my recovery journey. Working with Dr. Martinez, a psychologist specializing in family trauma, I began unpacking the complex emotions surrounding what had happened. "What you are describing is a lifelong pattern of narcissistic behavior," she explained during one session. "Your success triggered what therapists call narcissistic injury in your mother. Rather than celebrating your achievements, she experienced them as a personal attack that highlighted her own perceived inadequacies." Understanding the psychological dynamics did not excuse the behavior, but it helped me process it without internalizing blame. I had not caused this by being successful or setting boundaries. I had simply refused to be the supporting character in someone else's distorted narrative. "The guilt you feel is programmed, not earned," Dr. Martinez emphasized. "You did not break the relationship. You simply stopped allowing it to break you." By month 3 of recovery, I had regained significant mobility and returned to part-time work from home. My apartment felt truly mine again, cleansed of the negative energy that had pervaded it during those terrible weeks. I redecorated the guest room, transforming the space associated with betrayal into a peaceful reading nook filled with books and natural light. As physical pain receded, I found emotional clarity emerging in its place. The experience had forced me to confront and release patterns of guilt and obligation that had shadowed me since childhood. Setting boundaries was not selfish but necessary for authentic relationships. Love that came with conditions and costs was not really love at all. I developed what I came to call my Welcome to My Rules philosophy, a framework for evaluating relationships based on reciprocal respect rather than obligation or history. These personal rules became guiding principles for all relationships in my life. Respect for boundaries is non-negotiable. Support goes both ways without keeping score. Love does not demand sacrifice of self-worth. Trust must be earned and maintained, not assumed. Shared DNA creates opportunity for relationship, not entitlement to one. 6 months after the confrontation, I received a letter from my mother. It contained no apology, only justifications, and renewed guilt trips about family obligation. The old me would have been devastated, torn between anger and the persistent hope for maternal love and approval. Instead, I felt a calm acceptance. The letter revealed far more about her limitations than mine. I placed it in a folder rather than responding, acknowledging that some relationships cannot be healed through effort alone, particularly when the other person remains committed to harmful patterns. My relationship with my mother and Gerald was over, but my capacity for connection had expanded rather than diminished. Freed from the exhausting dynamics of proving my worth to those who could never truly see it, I invested that energy in relationships that nourished rather than depleted me. 1 year after the accident, I hosted a chosen family celebration at my fully accessible renovated home. The people who gathered represented diverse connections: childhood friends, business associates, neighbors, my care team, and even previously distant relatives with whom I had built healthier relationships. Standing in my living room, supported by a decorative cane, I now used only occasionally, I raised a glass to the circle of genuine support that surrounded me. To family, I said, the one we create through love, respect, and showing up for each other consistently. The journey had been painful beyond measure, but the clarity gained through that pain was invaluable. I had learned that family could be a source of either the deepest wounds or the most profound healing, sometimes both. The difference lay not in blood connections, but in the quality of love offered and boundaries respected. The peace I found came not from repairing broken relationships, but from accepting their true nature and creating space for healthier ones to flourish. My home became truly mine again, filled with genuine love rather than obligation and manipulation disguised as care. The greatest lesson emerged from the most painful betrayal. True strength sometimes shows itself not in enduring toxic relationships, but in having the courage to release them, making room for connections that reflect who we truly are and who we wish to become. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? What helped you through that process? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics and finding your authentic voice. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to create their own rules for relationships. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the family we choose brings the greatest healing. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.